A woman learns about a ritual to communicate with the dead. She decides to use it to bring back a lost family member. Reading time, 17 minutes. Now, also available on Wattpad and Pratilipi. A jeep rapidly advanced on the moonlit, lonely road in the dead of the night. The winds were calm and cold, whispering a melody. It was a serene night, waiting for something to happen. The driver, a young woman named Meghna, or Meg, stared at the empty path that seemed to be endless. Her mind harbored a chaos of endless thoughts and memories. A single drop of tears slid down her face while she tried to contain the raging storm in the ocean of her mind. Tonight's the night, Meg thought. She had been waiting for this night since she learned about the ritual. Tonight, I'll see if it works. I hope it does. Meg had left the city far behind her. Now her jeep was tracing its way on a single-lane road in the middle of a desert. There was not one living person for miles in any direction. Yet, she didn't seem to stop or slow down. What was she looking for in this vast, barren desert? A few minutes passed, or maybe an hour, but Meg didn't slow down the jeep. Half of her moonlit face radiated determination, while the other half was in the dark. But both her eyes were streaming hot fluid. I have not cried for 5 months, Meg thought. Why am I crying now? It's not like I miss her now more than before. She had not vacated my thoughts even for a minute in these 5 months. Is it because I'm getting closer to seeing her again? Is it? As if the empty, endless road had her hypnotized. She was blankly staring at it, but her mind was somewhere else. The old days came crashing into her consciousness like floodwater. No matter how hard she tried to keep herself in the present, it didn't work. As if the lonely silver road led to her very past. The desert was gone in a second, and so was the crescent moon and the silent night. The sound of the engine faded next, and Meg saw a face. It was a beautiful face, smiling affectionately at Meg. An angelic grace exuded from this face. Then, the face said something, a name maybe. The voice was like a song of 1,000 nightingales. Meg couldn't stop but smile back as she started crying like a child. No, wait, she was a child, running around in a garden with half-dead plants and dried flowers. She ran as fast as she could, but that angelic voice followed her everywhere with crackling laughter. And then, someone picked her up. Ah, gotcha, Meg cried with laughter. She tried to free herself as she said, Again. No, the sweet voice replied. It's time to go home now. We'll come back tomorrow, okay? No, again, Mom, please. Mom's tired, honey. And don't forget, we still have to finish that ice cream. So what do you say? Okay? That's my love. Let's go. Meg's mother looked just like her, only older. She kissed Meg all over while she carried her towards the exit. Meg threw one last look at the park. She felt that she had left a piece of her childhood there. It would always be there, buried like a treasure in the past. Meg only went to that park just one more time. The next time Meg saw that park, it had been completely transformed. Meg wasn't a little girl anymore. She had grown into a young woman. Her mother, on the other hand, had turned gray and feeble. Careful, said Meg, helping her mother. Slowly, slowly, yeah, that's it. Here we are. Meg helped her mother sit on a bench. She then sat next to her. The old, bald woman looked all around, trying to identify everything. Meg felt like her memories of the past came flooding back and swept her away with them. Do you remember you used to take me here to play? I do, the mother said softly, but it was not like this. Oh yeah, the committee took great care of it. I never saw it that green. They fixed the swings. You wanted to go on them so bad. Meg chuckled. But I never got to, she said. I wish I could be a little girl again. So basically, the mother said jokingly, you just want to undo the years of hard work I put into raising you. A crackling laughter echoed just like it did all those years ago. Meg's eyes were closed momentarily when her mother's eyes closed forever. The feeble body of her mother fell to the side. It took a few seconds for Meg to notice that her mother had stopped moving, as if she wanted to see the place where her daughter grew up one last time. When it occurred to Meg what had happened, her heart stopped for a second. The sheer horror on her face was evidence that she knew her mother wouldn't speak to her again. Her entire world came crashing on her. Her will to live had left her, and it hadn't returned since. The Jeep came to a screeching halt. Meg stepped out and looked at the infinite ocean of sand on the side of the road. A whiff of cold wind blew her hair while she stared at the crescent moon, thinking about something. Then, she stepped into the sand. Meg walked further away from the road with each step. Her journey, it seemed, had not come to an end yet. She walked and walked until she could no longer see the road. Her feet dug into the sand, and she struggled to walk further. The deafening silence of the grim night screamed into her ears. The winds whispered the tales of moonlit desert, but she didn't stop at all. The moon slowly crawled across a clear sky. Meg had no idea how long she had been walking, or how far, when she couldn't see anything but sand or the direction she had come from. When it occurred to her that she had finally arrived at her destination, she stopped. Meg closed her eyes and waited. The calm night and the soft winds washed Meg's agitation away. She became one with the night. And then... "Mom?" Meg's eyes searched for someone who wasn't there. She looked all around, eagerly searching for something. "Mom!" She called out again, but received nothing but silence. Meghna had not cried once since her mother passed away. She convinced herself that she needed to be strong. 5 months had passed without her breaking even once. She had turned into a machine, carrying out her work and living without feeling anything. She held strong for too long because it was time. "Mom, where are you?" Meg screamed, breaking the silent symphony of the night. "Why aren't you answering me? It's your daughter!" The cold winds ruffled some dust, and that was it. Nothing else happened. The desert fell dead quiet again. Meg's knees gave up. She slumped in the sand like a heavy puppet whose strings got cut. Her hair covered her face. Her shoulders moved as she started whimpering. Faint, little, but frequent sobs added a somber rhythm to the winds. A few drops hit the dry sand and got soaked up immediately. A woman sat in the middle of nowhere, crying alone in the dead of the night. There was no one for tens of miles to see or hear her. Then, as if the floodgates were opened, a sad, painful, low-pitched wail disturbed the dead. Meg started bawling. She knew no one could hear her, so she didn't care. The poor woman cried her eyes out while calling for her mother. She howled as loud as her pain demanded, and wailed as long as her weary corpus allowed her. Finally, her head gave up too. Before she could control it, her forehead struck the ground, and her nostrils filled with sand. It should work, Meg thought. Why isn't it working? Sheila said it would work. I have followed everything exactly as she had told me. Meg tried to remember if she had missed anything for the ritual to work. In the dead of the night and middle of nowhere, surrounded by an infinite ocean of sand, she sat on her knees, half passed out and with her head buried in the sand. With one eye, she peeked at her wristwatch, which showed the time 18 minutes past 3. Did I miss something? Meg asked herself. I made sure to follow the one and only rule Sheila said was essential. The hour of the dead? Meg had asked rhetorically on the afternoon of a busy day in their office. Could they have put a little more thought in the name? I mean, the hour of the dead? Really? Sheila leaned back to look at Meg from her cubicle. She looked annoyed when she said, I'm trying to help you. If you don't want to listen, fine with me. Sheila, that's not help! It's mockery! You are basically making fun of my situation. Dead don't come back. She's gone. I'll have to learn to live without her. If only you could, Sheila quickly replied. Her face changed and now carried worry and pity. Don't act like I don't know. Your landlady has told me everything. She has seen you alone on the balcony in the middle of the night. If therapy didn't help, I don't see any other option. I learned about this ritual from a friend of a friend, who read it in an ancient book. Something about it made me feel uneasy. It's different from all the hoodoo stuff that we know is a scam. This feels like a message from beyond. Just listen to me once, and if you don't feel it, then we can both forget about it. Meg wanted to throw another sarcasm, but Sheila looked very serious. Even if the ritual was fake, she believed it to be true. It was enough for Meg to care about it. "Fine," she said. "Let's hear it." Sheila slid her chair closer to Meg. Her voice turned to whispers, and her eyes popped out. "There's this secret library where all the hidden knowledge of the world is kept. The people who guard the library call themselves the keepers of the knowledge." Meg rolled her eyes. "Can we get to the point?" she requested. Sheila seemed hurt, but she kept going. "Anyway, the ritual I'm about to tell you is from a book that was stolen from this library. It's believed that the veil between the living and the dead is thinnest for about an hour or so in the night." Meg was skeptical until now, but something about Sheila's ridiculous story slowly started to affect her, as if she was being hypnotized by the very mention of this book. "And it's possible for us to cross over to the other side and communicate with the dead. How does the ritual go?" Sheila was taken aback for a moment by Meg's sudden interest. She smiled and said, "That's the part which made me believe it's the real deal. There's no actual process, no evil incantation, or some dark magic stuff required." She paused for a dramatic effect without even realizing it. "There's just one rule." "What?" "You have to get as far away from the living as possible. Get so far that you don't see anything but horizon all around." "Is that necessary?" Meg asked. "The horizon part." "Yes, it's essential." "That's 2 rules then." "Is it though? Think about it." And Meg had thought about it. A lot. She finally understood how these 2 rules were just one. It was clear to her that the ritual wouldn't work in a forest if it ever did. She couldn't take a boat all alone and travel to the middle of the ocean. Hence, there she was, in the middle of the desert on a cold, quiet, and dead night. Meg had thought the ritual would work. She believed it with all her heart. Her face was still buried in the sand, and her eyes were constantly streaked with tears. She didn't realize how loudly she was crying, but no one was around to hear. The only witnesses were the stars and the moon, as far away as her mother was.